It's a pleasure for me to be here, and certainly when I find myself very overwhelmed to be in the company of so many innovative people in the room. I've been with Cisco for over 20 years. That's where I grew up, right? Aside from taking a college and a master's degree, and certainly it helps define me as a person, as well as as somebody who's very interested in technology. What I would like to do today is share some of the exciting SaaS solution that we have in place called the Cisco Collaborative Knowledge. Certainly, this is very exciting because it combines the need for learning, continuous learning, knowledge sharing, collaboration, and analytics all in one platform. Why? Because what we're trying to do here is to really make our customers and partners and our employees, agile and be smarter and be prepared for the digital economy, okay? And certainly appreciate any questions you might have. Let's keep this as a dialogue. Certainly, you've probably seen this happening now, right? The workplace is changing very rapidly to meet the needs of the digital economy. But what's interesting right now is the change going on with the workforce. The workforce is becoming fluid, it's becoming mobile, global, and distributed. What does that mean? It means that they need to constantly be reskilled and learn new things just to keep up with their jobs. But most importantly, they need to feel connected to the organization and have access to real-time knowledge, learning, experts, and analytics so that they can make smart decisions. Because if they're an island, it will be very difficult for them to make those trade-offs, right? And certainly, I said before, they have to be connected with the organization because if they do that, all of their knowledge and learning could be transferred to the rest of the organization. And there's this emphasis on innovation and creativity. And you can't do that alone. What we find very interesting, at least in my years, 20 years at Cisco, having super engineers is not enough. They have to be able to share their knowledge, collaborate, and learn from each other. And that's how you can accelerate the learning process. Certainly, when you look at the trends surrounding workforce, organization, and trends, it's really supporting the need to have a virtualized and scalable way of learning and knowledge sharing and accessing experts. I mentioned something about the workforce being mobile and distributed. But what's interesting at this juncture is we are dealing with a very intergenerational workforce. Certainly, you can see all the baby boomers working side by side with the Gen Xers, and they don't behave the same way, or they don't even learn the same way. And as an organization, you have to start thinking about how can I make them productive? How can I make them successful? Because there's a need for you to transition a lot of the knowledge that are locked in the minds of so many of the baby boomers and somehow transfer it to the next generation of workforce. At the same time, from an organization point of view, there's a need to get the employees engaged. What's interesting, based on the most recent survey, is employees are not engaged in general. I think the last survey showed that only 30% of them are engaged. And you say, so what? It means you only have a third of their productivity because the rest of the time they're probably thinking of something else, right? And certainly with things moving faster, with the digital economy accelerating a lot of things, you need more of their mind share, right? And on the technology trend side, there's a lot going on. And you guys are probably going to be sharing some of the exciting technology that's happening in various sectors. And I'm hoping to do the same thing as well. But what's important now is you'll find that even learning is changing in a very different way, at least in the business world. Now, what we find very interesting is there's a convergence going on with learning and with knowledge acquisition. Corporate learning right now is getting to be more continuous, more modular, more mobile, more interesting and informal, right? I mean, if you have worked in a corporation before, what do you get? You get a learning management system, you attend a class, maybe if you're lucky, if they're pretty cool, they have some online learning. But things have changed, where now it's beyond the physical classroom, and there's the virtualized environment where you can personalize a lot of things. The technology is there, okay? And what's interesting here is there's a shift in terms of emphasis. Before, when you think about learning, it's something that is curated, that is provided by, let's say, corporations, by HR, by all the other folks. But now you have a choice to put the knowledge worker, the learner, or the employee in the driver's seat. And he or she could choose what path to use to do that. Of course, for a lot of cynics, they said, hey, that sounds good, but it's not happening yet. But I wanted to give you some data points. According to the most recent research from Burson, Deloitte, I think it was done last year, over 70% of all corporate learning now is done informally. Is that a shock? Let me see. Show of hands. Do you think that's true? Or do you think we're still in formal learning land? See? Uh-oh. But what's interesting is we're doing it probably underground. We're not really doing it officially, right? And correspondingly, the companies, corporations are relooking at what they're spending for learning. It's not just about learning management systems. It's more around how do you support mentoring, communities of practice, or even knowledge sharing? Or how do you help them develop informal videos on demand? YouTube, you know? I mean, my daughter learned how to crochet through YouTube, right? And I'm sure that you have the same experience, and you see that transferring to the corporate world. And certainly when you do that, you're promoting continuous learning. And this is another study shown by Burson and Deloitte, basically saying that if you promote continuous learning and knowledge sharing, it does come with some good benefits. It is directly correlated to promoting the level of engagement of your employees, making them more productive, and retaining your talent, as well as making them feel happy about themselves. And by the way, this is very, very, very prevalent for the upcoming Gen Xers. They certainly feel like they want to be engaged, and they want to feel important, and they want to be connected. Now, as consumers, we are privy to so many technologies out there that could help us in our lives, right? I mean, you have smartphones, you have smart devices, you can grab them if you want to, you can rate and comment them. But what's interesting is you do not have the same choice when you're working because it's dictated to you. But that is changing right now because what's happening now is, there's the rise of, it's like a rebellion. It's saying, hey, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to start, putting in Evernote or Dropbox to be able to do our things, or Google Drive, right? But, and so the corporations now are paying heed to that. And they basically think about this. They basically say, hey, we need to really focus on the user. It's not about the admin functions. And just think, for years and years, you have to go from one system to another to do your learning, to do your knowledge sharing, to save content and everything. Isn't that just a matter of time for you to be able to have one platform to do that, and to be able to do it from any device, and to do it when you need to? I mean, just think, it's not impossible. You have all of those pieces together, but they're not talking to each other. And so, at Cisco, we were faced with that. And later I will show you a use case where We had to do that because we had to transform an entire organization. And we couldn't find anything out there that could do everything in an integrated platform. So we decided to work together and have an open source, based on open source, because we didn't do everything from scratch, and develop a platform. And the digital experience would encompass a lot of things. And again, this is not just any ordinary digital workplace platform. We focus on what needs to get done, which is learning and knowledge sharing, okay? And certainly as part of learning, you need to be able to connect with experts. But the definition of expert is relative. You need to find the right expert for you, right? And how do you define expert? Expert is defined by their credentials, right? Self-declare. But also, there are crowdsourcing technology out there that could validate that. This is not new. We've done it with LinkedIn, right? With a couple other places. But now you want to bring that in as part of the offering. And certainly, once you find your expert, are they really doing what they say they're doing? There should be a way to be able to validate them not only through crowdsourcing, but through their deeds. And so the expert profile here is a living, breathing passport, where every time they do any activity, say on the community, it's included in there. So now you know exactly what the expert is all about, whether the expert is right for you. And last but not least, that's fine. You found your expert. How do you connect with them? You have to have the means to connect with them synchronously or asynchronously. So it's kind of like a full circle. I mean, it's not enough that you found them. You have to be able to connect with them and to be able to collaborate with them so that they can help you solve the problem. Social networking tools. This is very interesting for the Gen Xers. I found when I talked to some of the customers, the Gen Xers do not want to attend classes, or a lot of them don't. They feel like, hey, I did that. I just did that for 4 years. Why are you doing this to me? You know? I want to be able to learn from my peers. And surprisingly, a couple of the startups, they basically said, I can't get them to attend classes, but they can do online learning, and they can also learn from communities of practice, as well as working with mentors. And so it's a certain shift in the way they learn. And certainly with social networking tools, it's there, and it would be able to be a big help for the next generation of employees. While you're doing the knowledge sharing, you have to kind of think about, hey, I better do this in a very secure environment, right? If you don't, you would get into trouble, but most importantly, there are certain IP that you want to protect. And certainly while you're sharing knowledge, ideally you could share it across the enterprise as well as your own in the cloud securely somewhere. And certainly when you want to collaborate with people, you would like to be able to collaborate them real-time, video, or even synchronously or asynchronously. And I put down WebEx, but there's quite a number of other players out there as well. And the learning management system will be evolving, because now they will have to be able to be mobile. They have to be accessible from any device. They have to be able to allow some personalization to be able to make it worthwhile for a lot of the employees. And while you're doing that, you ask yourself, why do I bother with an integrated solution? Because in the back end, they can capture all of those activity streams and provide you with the analytics that you can have as a person. And for the first time, you don't have to run reports. You can see it in front of you and say, what have I learned so far from certain domain areas? And then how do I go about learning it? And that would be good feedback, not only for an individual, but also for an organization. And so that's how we created the collaborative knowledge. Okay, so that sounds very interesting, but have you give it a try? So in the next few slides, what I'm going to do is give you real-life use cases, starting with ourselves, right? I mentioned before that when we created collaborative knowledge, it's really to solve our own problem. We were trying to transform our service organization. Why? We talk about a lot of things going on, right? How do we prepare for the digital future? How do we support Internet of Things? We've been talking about it, but we have to be able to support it as an organization. And so the chief service officer at that time have asked us to look around and find a way for us to reskill over 14,000 employees, right? Because the selling motion would be different, the knowledge would be different, the strategy would be different from a service organization, okay? And certainly we did take a look at the landscape to see, is there something there closely, available that we can do that? And we couldn't find it. We find best-of-breed products that focus on certain capabilities. And so we decided that instead of trying to cobble them together, we created one that is fully integrated and added a very good user experience for that. Oh, with regard to outcome, we were able to do it in 1 year, which is goodness. And that translates into higher productivity for the organization. Of course, it translates into better sales motion. But most importantly, I like to note that it improves the level of satisfaction of the service employees within that organization, as well as what we call engagement model. Now you say, okay, engagement model, how do you measure that, right? Engagement model, we measure it a couple ways. First of all, we identify the levels of participation in various groups, right? Whether it's significant or not, or broadly represented. So that's one. And then the other thing is, are they actually going in? And to this day, we found out that 1 out of 3 employees still go and visit there. And the way they said it to us was, this is like a virtual water cooler, where we go in, hang out, take a look, and see, hey, what's going on with the service organization? That's how they see that. And when you have a very distributed, very global organization, it helps because now you have a way to unite them. Because somebody from Japan won't be able to visit you all the time, but they can connect with you through the digital platform. And the other measure for engagement is really the level of activity and what we call co-creation. We started off with all the content being curated, we push them there, seed all the communities. 80% is generated from our site. By last year, it went the other way, where 70% of the content now is generated by the communities. Now, is that important? Yes. It's showing that they are sharing a lot of what we call informal knowledge. You're creating what we call a tribal knowledge, or somehow institutionalizing collective organizational intelligence. Because now a lot of the tricks of the trade are incorporated in those communities and shared and institutionalized so that the new kids will be able to share them, to be able to avail them. And certainly, we were not the only one who tested this. We did talk to several customers. I think we talked to over 150 customers before we rolled this out, because we're very serious about making sure that it works, because our customers are very, very demanding. And certainly you do not want to be on the bad list. And let me just go through 2 use cases here. They're very interesting cases that use the platform for different reasons. So this one is very interesting with the New York Academy of Science. What they've done here is they use the platform as a way to groom the future scientists, okay? It sounds exciting, but really what are they trying to do? You're connecting the budding scientists with the Nobel laureates, okay? Now, and then they can work on a specific topic of interest that's STEM related. But you know what's very important is the stories behind it. I think that we talked about the human interaction with technology. And this is something that is very much more transparent, because now it's not about them working on a specific topic of STEM, but the budding scientists understanding the human aspects, the passion behind creating something new. And that is more exciting, and that is more lasting, because now the budding scientist has an inspiration. And that certainly goes a longer way than, let's say, they work on a specific project, don't you think? Now, this other one is kind of interesting too. And I don't know if Stanford is on the list. But this involves a top automobile company. And what they're doing now is they work on a lot of researches related to, employee safety, customer safety and experience. And they do it in partnership with a lot of universities, okay? And they're doing great. In fact, the returns are very good. But what they find very interesting is the point-to-point interaction and collaboration is effective, right? Where the universities are pretty much working with the company. But what they wanted to explore is the idea of the universities actually working together, creating their expert community, designing it so that you can see the correlation on specific topic. Like for instance, it could be U of M working on, tire pressure or material science. How does this relate to, let's say, let's say Stanford is working on teen driving, right? Those things, when you look at it, then you can certainly accelerate the process. And that's how they were, thinking about using the collaborative knowledge. And certainly, in all of this, there's quite a lot of use cases, but we thought that those are the ones that are interesting, that could, have that discussion. And in summary, the collaborative knowledge just, is a SaaS solution. And it was rolled out last April. And we've been working with a lot of customers, big and small, in various industries. And really, they find very different use cases for it, because at the end of the day, what are they trying to do? They're trying to solve their problems, right? They're trying to innovate. They're trying to get engaged. They want to share knowledge. It is certainly, I have to say that the platform itself is just one part of the equation. And really, the human aspect has to also be included here. So with that, let me just pause and see if you have any questions.